This is Just Something About Her, a podcast from the Recount.
If I am true to myself and just speak the way that I do and write about the things that I want to write about, maybe there'll be a smidge less rejection.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Palmieri. On this show, we're getting to the bottom of what still holds women back from women who are beating the odds. This week's guest, Phoebe Robinson. Phoebe Robinson, welcome to Just Something About Her. It's like a delight to actually get to meet you.
Thanks for having me on. I'm stoked.
Okay, so we are here to discuss your news book, Please Don't Sit on My Bed in Your Outside Clothes, which is hilarious. Mm-hmm. But I was just reflecting with our producer, Sari, that you have written 3 books in about 5 years. And I was just like, this woman, 3 books, all these, the like super famed Two Dope Queens podcast, all of these stand-up shows, all of these specials, you're on like all of these late night shows, you were interviewing Michelle Obama, and I'm literally welling up of tears of like stress for you. Just in everything you do, whether it's writing or your podcast or your stand-up, there's a very generous spirit that you do it with. That's like really great, positive energy. Is that something you did intentionally? Is that just your personality? How did it come about?
I think it's a combination. I mean, certainly I started doing stand-up 13 years ago, and I was never, as a kid,
so how old were you
then?
You're like in your late 30s now, right?
Yeah, I was like 23, about to turn 24. Mm-hmm. And, I think stand-up comedy has certainly come a long way since I started 13 years ago.
Yeah.
But, when I started, it was sort of like, it still is, quote unquote, a man's world. And like, there's the creepy guys, there's the misogynist guys, there are the guys who are just going to sort of kind of like dominate the space. And I just was kind of like, I don't want to do that, and that those aren't my icons or my heroes or who I want to emulate. And so I really had to figure out for myself, how can I be true to myself and still be funny, and be inclusive and feel good about the work that I'm putting out there. So it's definitely intentional.
Yeah, and it is, did you doubt whether it might work?
I mean, I think, so at the point that Jess and I started Two Dope Queens, or like when we met, I was like 6.5 years into comedy, and I was like submitting to write on every late night show, SNL, like just all these like staffing jobs, and I wasn't getting them, and I couldn't figure it out why. And it was so because I was like trying to mold my voice to sound like Fallon, and Jimmy Fallon's hilarious and great, but
yep,
I shouldn't be trying to sound like him or write like him.
You're a better Phoebe Robinson than a poor imitation of Jimmy Fallon, as it turns out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so true. And so I really realized like so many people who are sort of held up and propped up as like the Seinfelds and the Bill Burrs and the Carlins. I'm like, they're all phenomenal, but they are white men. That is not who I am. And so I really, around that time, I was sort of like, what if I just truly tried to be myself? It's probably going to take way longer because I'm not sort of imitating what's already worked in a certain way. But I was like, if I am true to myself and just speak the way that I do and write about the things that I want to write about, maybe there'll be a smidge less rejection. And that turned out to be the case. And when Jess and I did Two Dope Queens, we got so many, DMs being like, I never thought that stand-up was for me, because I go to these shows and it'd be all straight white guys and they would just say like crappy things about women. So I thought, stand-up comedy is not for people of color, or is not for women. And when people got that feedback that they felt that this was a safe space where they could come and laugh and not worry that they're going to be made fun of horribly. First off, we want to thank Sojourner Truth,
Harriet Tubman,
Nat Turner,
Rosa Parks again,
Thurgood Marshall,
Oprah Winfrey,
Belle Biv but not DeVoe. I was like, oh my gosh, we're onto something here. We just didn't think it was going to resonate in that way.
You really wanted to be a boss. You write about that, right? Tell us the story of your career path from like when you started as a receptionist at New Line Cinema, to podcasting and the and now even have your own literary imprint, which is the coolest thing.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was really into film and TV. And so my dream was to be a screenwriter and write really serious films that would win Oscars. Like and I watched a lot of comedy. I watched, Living Color, SNL, Martin, all those shows. But I never wanted to work in comedy. So I moved to New York. I studied writing at Pratt Institute, and I worked at New Line Cinema as a receptionist, and then I got promoted to their indie film company, Picture House, to assist to be the executive assistant to the president of Picture House. And I'm just sort of sitting here, and I'm like, I kind of hate this, which I was so shocked by. And around this time, it was like 2008, my really good friend from college, Lindsay, she was like, hey, I want to take this stand-up class at Caroline's on Broadway in Manhattan. Do you want to take it with me? I was like, okay, how do I get into this? So then I just started sort of staying up super late to watch Comedy Central, because if I stayed up super late, they would just air old stand-up specials. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to get HBO and I'm going to start watching all these stand-up specials. I'm going to go to these open mics, which are just where you just go around the city, and sometimes you buy a drink just so you can go on stage and sort of run your material. I did every comic, you stay these gross hotels. I did all that paying of the dues. And then I met Jessica, and Two Dope Queens really just became this thing that neither of us saw coming as anything other than just a fun show. And then when we sold it to HBO, that's when we were like, oh.
You're like, oh, this shit is for real. So in your book, you write about how there's not many guides for being a woman boss, especially a woman in charge. But you love being a boss, and you created your own production company, your own literary imprint. What was the path like to wanting your own production company and literary imprint?
ABC had emailed me about just, hey, we have this pilot. We think you'd be a good fit for it. We don't want you to audition for the part. Just read the script and let us know if you love it. And I was like, oh my God, that's every actor's dream is you don't have to audition. We just want you for it. And I read the script. It just didn't feel quite like me. You know what I mean? When you try on a really cute outfit and you're like, I know this designer's good. I know they're popular. It's not cut for my body. And so I passed on the pilot, and I was kind of I know I just passed on, because I think they were, let's talk about money. I feel like no one
Oh, please
ever
do.
wants to talk about
I
money.
know that's a big thing with you. Talk about money. Yeah. How much was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were offering $150,000 to do the pilot. It was something. It was definitely in the hundreds. Where it's
just to shoot for you to shoot the pilot. It was already written, not to write it, but to shoot it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to shoot it.
Yeah.
So it was that's a lot of money, and I was just
yeah.
I was I just don't think this is right for me, and I was I think this is the right decision to say no, but it's tough when you're presented with that money to be
to say no in an industry like this, and you're I think that I feel pressure. You're a little bit of success, you got to build on it, it's going to be fleeting, take whatever option comes your way, but you had the wherewithal to say no. Good for you.
Yes. Yeah, so I said no, and I was I'm going to work on this show ID that's kind of dying, and really hope it works out. And then a few months later, they emailed and they're hey, we know you didn't want to do that pilot, but have you thought about running your own production company? And I was but I just told you guys no, and now you're coming back to talk to me? What?
That's a good lesson.
What I learned from that was kind of when it's scary to turn down money because you don't know what money's coming around the corner, it's very scary to do that. But if you know you are not right for the thing, then you shouldn't take it, because you don't want to lock yourself into something that you're going to regret later.
Okay, so you started this literary imprint, and it's called Tiny Reparations. And it says Tiny Reparations because each book is a little bit of a reparation, or why is it called Tiny Reparations?
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
It's just my way of giving back. Jessica and I used to always joke that if there were ever reparations, we would never get it because we're too ignorant. We want to save that for the actual activists, but we could get tiny reparations in life. And I feel with this imprint, I really just wanted it to be a place where, people from all walks of life can get their work published. And I think, as much as I love the publishing industry, I think they have narrow views about what women are allowed to write, what people of color are allowed to write, what gay people are allowed to write. And I'm just write whatever the hell you want as long as it moves you and it's well done. Like, you could have a home here. Those empty black boxes, I hated that so much. And I'm like, I want to be like, what do you think that is? What do you think that's doing?
Okay, so let's get like in it on white saviors. Great segue.
Yeah, let's do it. Roll up these sleeves, baby.
In your book, you talk about your British boyfriend, for the uninitiated, is the British Bake Off. It's just like, it's just still, right? I mean, it's like never not funny. But you talk about the good times and the bad times during 2020, you know, when you all are living together for the first time. And you write, every so often, last summer, I needed to wake up, roll over, and be able to commiserate with another Black person. Share an oh so heavy exhalation with someone who just got it, and BB didn't. So describe what that experience taught you, how you're able to navigate it through last summer.
Yeah, I mean, last summer was truly just a horrible time for the world, you know? There was a lot of police activity, certainly in New York. And so we just see for like hours, like just police patrolling up and down, or like late at night, you know, fireworks going off at like 2 or 3 in the morning. A lot of that stuff to sort of like keep people awake and anxious. And it was really a tough time. And he certainly, you know, neither of us have ever experienced anything like this in our lifetimes. But I think, you know, him being from the UK and having lived in America, I think at that point, like 3.5, maybe 4 years, I think for him, he was just sort of, he couldn't believe what was happening. He was just like, this is unbelievable and horrible. And so he got that on, you know, a human level. But at the end of the day, he could walk outside our apartment building and go, you know, run an errand and not really have to worry about anything because he's a white man. And so it was good for us to just sort of have conversations about it. And I think he was just so smart and just being like, I don't know exactly what this feels like, and I'm not ever going to fully be able to understand it, but I am here for you whenever you need me. And just sort of like having that sort of presence of mind to be like, I don't have to fix this. I don't have to save the day.
Fix this.
Yeah. And just be like, I could just listen, and I could just, maybe just me just being here and sitting and having this conversation is all you need today. And so I'm happy to do that. And so he just wanted to be present, and I really appreciated that. And I really think that made us so strong last year, just because I'm like, wow, he gets it. He gets what he needs to be doing right now, and it helps.
So I dare say then what the British Bake Off was providing is allyship, as opposed to performative allyship. So could you describe how you would define performative allyship as sort of in contrast to what BB does?
Yeah, I think, you know, he was like, I don't want to just like get on social media and post a caption. He was like, that just doesn't feel like it's doing anything.
Post an empty black box, for example.
Yeah. I know, those empty black boxes. I hated that so much. And I'm like, I want to be like, what do you think that is? What do you think that's doing? What do you think that is helping? It's so absurd. But I just saw him just, you know, he's close with a lot of his friends back from the UK, and sort of, you know, some of their friends were just being like, oh, this is just, I guess, an American thing. And he was like, no, it's not. He was like, we're from the UK. We know there's racism here. And we know that Black people aren't treated well here. And so it was good for him to have these conversations with his friends and with people he knows back home, and sort of educate them instead of asking me to do it. And, you know, he was donating to bail funds, which I thought was like, of all the things that he wanted to donate to, like, I was like, that's so great. We need like more money in bail funds. And I think a lot of this performative allyship that we were seeing last summer, where people are making these grand proclamations that we hear you now and we're here to make things better. And I'm just like, well, that still doesn't explain why your C-suite is all white, or why you don't like once people of color hit sort of like a managerial level, they don't get promoted beyond that. And you would see people say all these things, we're going to change things. And then we look now a year later and it's, how different are things really? And I think people just wanted to show they're on the right side of history and that they're not the bad guy. And I'm like, it has to be with your actions. It can't be with a social media post.
I know, like my white female friends were sort of desperate to try to make things okay, particularly if they have black friends. And, you know, it's like, your black friends know you got a little racism in you and they've liked you anyway. Like, it's not news to them, you know?
Yeah.
And they've just, you know, they see it, they love you anyway. You should find a way in your own life, whether it's in your workplace, hiring and more, you know, making sure that you're like hiring, you know, have more diversity, like on all levels. And, you know, there's like things you can do in your own life, but the desperation to post was super cringy.
It was a lot. It was cringy, and it was just like, yeah, and like, oh, the whole like support black businesses thing. Like, I know there was one friend, white girlfriend of mine. She like was like, there's this company called like All Black Everything. And it's like just like sort of like athleisure, cool streetwear. Uh-huh. So she was wearing like one of their All Black Everything. It's like all across her chest, and I'm like, That is what you thought we're asking for? For you to buy a sweatshirt that says all black everything? That is insane to me. I'm like, that is not what like, I just had to laugh because I was like, they appreciate the money, but that sweatshirt's not for you. It's really not for you, dog. Just, you know, just go to a restaurant that has a black chef and patronize that. That would be beneficial. Like educating yourself about racism, but like just wearing black themed clothing as a white lady is not the move, you know? Yeah.
And be aware that like the healthcare system, the education system, like continues to be terrible, and like racism is built into that. And so like try to fix that.
Even I'm constantly having to educate myself. Like far from knowing everything. And so you have to really be committed to like taking that knowledge and then turning it into action that is actually going to be beneficial to someone else, rather than action that is solely about making you feel good for taking that step. When you look at something like education, I remember when I went to Pratt Institute, I went there 2002 to 2006. 4 years, I only had one black teacher for 4 years in Brooklyn. And it was African American studies, and that was my black teacher. And then all the other teachers, it was predominantly like white male men or white males telling everyone how to write. That is not what education should be. It should not just be white men being like, you must sound like this in order to be a quote unquote good writer.
Right.
And so those are those things where you can like go to your schools and be like, okay, this curriculum needs to be more than just Shakespeare and Beowulf and whatever else.
Classics.
And we need to really... Yeah, the classics that conveniently leave women out, conveniently leave men out, black people out, conveniently leave all races out, all queer people out. Like, we have to do those things that are less sexy. Like, talking about school curriculum isn't hot. Schools formulate so much of how we view the world. And, like, you know, if you don't have any teachers who aren't men, who aren't white men, the messaging is going to be, oh, white men should be the one in charge.
You have good examples in your book of sort of like small changes within our own community. So can you do you want to share some of those?
It's all these sort of just like remembering every single day to sort of look around you and figure out like, I don't have to defund the police. No one is asking for one single person to defund the police or change the healthcare system. But it could be like, if a person of color says they don't feel good and you are a doctor, listen to that. Don't go, oh, you're fine. So it's like these are small actions that they seem like small actions, but just listening to someone could save a life. And so we just need to be mindful of that and do that every day. And yes, the work is tiring and exhausting, but the activists who are really doing the real work day in, day out in the trenches, like they have it way worse. So we can each do our little part. Understand that you are still worthy and you're still whole and you're still a woman, even if you don't want to have children.
Okay, so you have one of the great chapters in here. Yes, I have free time because I don't have kids. I think a lot of women forget to ask themselves if they want children. So did you have a moment like that? How did you learn to feel confident in your decision to not have children?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was certainly a journey because, I think when I was younger, I was a teenager, I was like, oh yeah, of course I'll have kids, Yeah, why not? Sure, I'll have kids. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, I'll just do it. I was just like, I kept like putting it off and like, oh, it's not something I have to like deal with or contend with. And, I was so just sort of like, well, of course I'm going to want to have kids, right?
Right.
And then when I sort of realized in my late 20s that I didn't, I was like, something has to be wrong here. Like, I wouldn't come to this conclusion if something wasn't wrong with me.
Wasn't wrong with
as
you?
Opposed, yeah.
You saw it as like
it's
a
like
defect in yourself?
Yeah, of course. I was like, something must be broken here that I want to be a mother. I was like, what is going on? And then I like sort of had the realization where I was just kind of like, no, I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I love being an aunt. I love being around kids. But it does not call me. Like, being a parent does not call me. Like, even now, like, and so many of my friends now are having kids. And it's so great. And I still don't feel that call. And I had to just sort of be like, that's more than okay, too. That's normal. Like, why would I think that everything else, like, people can have all different kinds of opinions on, but motherhood in particular, there's only every single woman wants to be a mother. Now, I had to really unpack that and go deprogram yourself. Understand that you are still worthy and you're still whole and you're still a woman, even if you don't want to have children. And, I also think about, yes, I'm choosing to be child free, but there are so many people who want to have children. So many women who want to have children, they can't. And it's like, well, does that mean that something's wrong with them? That they're not able to have children? I think society, everyone is so quick to just make these snap judgments about people. And when it comes to motherhood or parenthood in general, like, that's a very personal, specific choice and journey for everyone. And I think people would be happier if women were allowed to say that yes, I love being a mother. I love my kids. It is also hard. And this is not me complaining. This is me saying that this is a hard fucking job and we need to acknowledge that. But no, if you're a woman and you have a kid, you have to be like, I'm just on a lily pad and I'm just holding my baby and there's a rainbow behind me. And it's like,
lily pad.
It's like, yeah, like, no woman can live up to that fantasy of what motherhood is supposed to be. And I feel like we don't allow women to speak or be their full selves or to take ownership over their lives or have conflicting feelings about whatever their choice is. And so I think that's why a lot of times women feel a little trapped in what they want to do with their lives.
You said you could be both a hopeless romantic and be somebody who doesn't want kids. And I think a lot of times it's like, if I'm a feminist that doesn't want children, I'm not sure I'm allowed the rest of the package.
Yes, where you go, well, I don't want to be a mother, so I guess this means I shouldn't want to have a partner. Or that no guy is going to love me because I'm not going to want to have kids. And so I think it is really hard because you're like, okay, I want to be a feminist. And then you have to realize feminism encompasses all these choices. It's basically the ability to make a choice. And so I had to sort of like remind myself that I'm not only a feminist if I do life in a certain kind of way. That's not what it's about. You know what I mean? And so me sort of being like, yes, I am a businesswoman and I love my career and I want to have this partner, but I don't want to have kids is also as valid as, you know, someone being a stay-at-home mother or it's all good. If you're able to make the choice that you want to make, that is so good because guess what? 50 years ago, women did not have the choice they didn't have the opportunity to make the choices that they wanted to make all the time.
I'm going to let you go. You've figured out so much in life. It's fantastic. When does the book, when does it come out?
The book comes out, Please Don't Sit on My Bed in Your Outside Clothes, September 28th. And my stand-up special comes out on HBO Max on October 14th.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic.